right, well, good morning, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. We are here for a 45-minute session on creating your 2023 People Development Plan. This is a free workshop hosted by Mahoney Performance Institute. We'll get into a little bit more about who we are in just a second. But before we do that, just a few housekeeping things. So throughout the session, as if you have any questions, feel free to use the chat function. I'll be monitoring that throughout, and we'll have way more than enough time at the back end of the session to answer any of your questions and dive into those in more detail. And we are recording this session in full. So if there's at any point you have to drop off or later you just want to reference what we had talked about today, you'll have the recording to the full 45-minute session that you can reference as you go. So without further ado, my name is Rachel Behar. I'm the digital marketing specialist here at MPI. I am joined by my colleague, Bruce Parsons. If you want to introduce yourself, Bruce.
Thank you, Rachel. Good morning, everybody. Yes, Bruce Parsons. I'm a principal consultant from the Mahoney Performance Institute. I've been with MPI for about 5.5 years now. Prior to that, I worked for a people, process, and technology consulting firm. I was a traveling consultant going around the country helping businesses do better. And before that, I worked for a medical device manufacturer as a business transformation leader, and then had some project management work with GE Power Systems in Schenectady. And then prior to that, I worked for 15 years for a pulp and paper machinery supplier in many different capacities: marketing, sales, project management, program management, and so on. So very much looking forward to our conversation today, and hope you enjoy it.
Thanks, Bruce. So before diving into the content, just to kind of set our objective for today. So we hope today that you leave this session feeling confident and prepared. What do we mean by that? We're going to share 3 really powerful tools with you to help you create your people development plan for 2023. We're going to share them kind of at a high level, but there's a lot more detail sort of underneath the surface, right? So we hope that you leave this session today feeling confident to take these back to your desk, actually use and apply them so that you feel really confident and comfortable bringing, whatever ideas come out of today's session to your executive team and your CEO to create your 2023 development plan. So without further ado, Bruce, you want to share how we're going to get there today?
Sure. So this is kind of our agenda today. We're first going to talk about, before you can create a plan for the future, you have to have a good solid understanding of where you currently lie in your organizational and people development planning. So we'll talk a little bit about your current state. And then our focus today is going to be looking at your top talent and making sure you're nurturing and developing them, because they bring the most to your organization. Many studies have shown that. And then we're going to share an idea for how to plan for developing and retaining that top talent that is tangible, easy to use, and present to your leadership team to gain approval to move forward. And ultimately, a few strategies and how you can share this with your executive team to actually get traction in the authorization to move forward. All right, so on the situational analysis side, we'd like all of you thinking about, at the highest level, at the big picture, any development plan you have for your organization really should be aligned with your organization's strategic plan. You should be making sure you're developing people in alignment with where you're taking your company and why. So whenever you're talking about leadership development, organizational development, people development with your senior leaders, it's always wise to be considering how is that plan aligned with your organization's strategic plan. So that's the second bullet there: leadership and development. That's with L&D, alignment with the objectives of your strategy. Now, some of you may not have a visible or even a strategic plan, but you can at least talk about how your people development plan is aligned with longer term operational objectives for your organization. And the second piece of situational analysis is you really, at MPI, we encourage our customers to be very analytical in the way they look at things. And how is your organizational structure aligned with your strategic intent? In other words, do you have the right roles and the right people in those roles to meet the objectives of your strategy. And is your current structure there, or do you need to adjust that structure to align with that? And again, if you don't have a strategic plan, what is your operational plan? And is your structure aligned with that? So really, it's just at a high level, making sure you understand your current situation. You understand if that you have or will have a plan for developing people that's aligned with your longer term or your annual goals for your organization. All right. So then you're looking at training programs. So some of you have current programs that you're running, and you should whenever you're presenting a new plan going forward, you should acknowledge what current programs you have or ones that you've done in the recent past, because they should be at least considered in your plan going forward. But then you'll be creating a plan for what you're going to do going forward. And of course, you want to leverage any programs you've done in the past that have worked really well, that have produced really good results. And then secondly, we're suggesting you have an analytical approach at how you evaluate your team, especially your leaders, but your entire team, regarding who is our top talent, who's really going to bring this organization to the next level. And we use a tool called the ABC analysis to do that. And we also suggest it's important to identify who your C players are. We'll talk about that in a minute, because there's certain actions in your development plan that you might want to take with your C players. All right, so we have two tools that we want to share with you that will help you with this analytical approach to identifying your key players, your top players, your top performers, and what you're going to do to develop them. The first one is called an ABC analysis, and it's really just classifying your people in three major buckets. And this is not about pigeonholing people or labeling people. It's just a way in which we can uncover and learn who are really top performers and who have the potential to bring this organization forward powerfully. And then who are our B players, who is the heart and soul of our company, who get this stuff done every day. And then who are our C players. So when you look at this tool, we give you some guidance on how to classify each. An A player is in the top 25% in executing his or her responsibilities. They also exhibit the potential to play a larger role within the organization over the next 2 years, and they have a great attitude toward their job. So to be an A player, you must be in the top 25%, and you must have a great attitude. And ideally, they are showing potential to play a larger role. So the first and third bullets under A player are must-haves, and the middle bullet is a nice-to-have. But must have a great attitude there is very, very important. We'll get to more of that in a minute. Then your B players are in the top 75% of your performers. They may or may not be able or have the potential, even want to play a larger role in your company in the next 2 years. But they also must have a good attitude towards their job, team, and company. And those are about 70% of your employees. And as noted, and the A players, those are about 20% of your employees. And those numbers are what we've seen over long periods of time. That data holds pretty true with most of the clients we work with who use this tool and data we've collected. And then your C players are people who are in the bottom 20% of performance. They're exhibiting no potential to play a larger role and or have a bad attitude toward their job, team, or company. So someone can be a C player with only that, a bad attitude. And so what we're encouraging you to do is, in today's labor shortage, talent shortage world, know who your A players are, because they're the most valuable to your organization. They're bringing the most impact to your organization. And studies have shown by Gallup and others that they deliver anywhere from 50 to 400% more impact than B players. So they're very, very expensive to lose. And those are probably, our conversation today is focused on developing them, because we're just trying to give you one tangible place to start, and we're suggesting it's that. But your C players are also important, because you want to make sure you understand why they're a C, and you're taking action as a leader to move them up into the B category or the A category. And if they're a C because of a bad attitude, you're trying to uncover if that attitude is coachable, if they're coachable to get out of that bad attitude, that to ultimately become a B player, then that's definitely a worthwhile effort to do so, especially in the labor shortage world we're in today. But we also want to recommend to you, if you have team players that have a bad attitude and they're not coachable to get out of that attitude, to recognize the impact they're having on the organization. They can be, you've heard the term toxic, but they're at least, their attitude is probably wearing off on others and could be dragging others down. So part of your development plan could be identifying your C players and managing them out of their C or out of the organization, because they may be doing harm to your organization. So this tool, yeah, go ahead, Rachel.
I was going to say, this is a tool that we use quite a bit with our clients. So could you just share with our audience some of the feedback that we've heard in terms of the effectiveness of this tool?
Yeah, that's a good question, Rachel. So we often get skeptics at the beginning when they first look at this tool, like, this seems too simple. It seems too harsh. It feels like we're pigeonholing people. We're labeling them, and this really isn't intended to do any of that. It's intended to simply and straightforwardly understand who are your top players and who are your bottom players who you want to make sure you're managing up or out. But ideally, for this exercise today, you're looking at to identify who your top players are, because we're recommending those are your highest priority population to be developing. Because they have, as stated before, they're going to bring the most value to you, and have been. And initially those numbers, those percentages, the skeptics say, I don't think that's going to be true. But after they do this analysis honestly, they realize those numbers come out to be pretty true, unless they have a very small group size. Like if they have 3, it's possible with a group of 3, they might have 2 A players and 1 B. Or 1 A player and 2 Bs, and so on. So the numbers, but when you have a group size of 10 or more, these percentages will largely hold true. So in other words, there's initial skepticism when this tool is first seen, but after it's actually used, they really embrace it and have been able to use it. So then succession planning, most organizations want to be doing this, but very few actually do it well. And this is really, we encourage all of you to think about this mindfully, because there's lots of data out there that says when you can promote from within, you're going to be a lot more successful, both in the short term and the long term. But too often we're not developing people and able to promote from within when, say, a senior leader or a leader leaves the organization, and we find that we don't have anybody ready or even capable to replace them, so we have to hire from the outside. We highly recommend you use some sort of succession planning tool for any leader in your organization that you want any and everybody in your organization to be able to grow out of their position. So we should be designing a pathway for people who could replace them. And you can see this tool is just a straightforward way of looking at who is the team member and who are the people who could replace them, how ready are they, and then ultimately what are their development needs. So you can see the column here that says development needs. What does that person need to fulfill the new role? It could be leadership development, it could be technical skills, and so on. But you want to make sure you understand the people, how ready are they, and then what development needs they might have. So this is just a straightforward tool to help you think analytically about this and to record some information and help you. It gives visibility to succession planning. And all of your A players, I would suggest, should be on a one or more succession plans because they have high potential, and you want to be looking for where are they going next. And that should be a mix of where they want to go and where you feel they best fit to fulfill the aspirations of your organization. So these two tools are very good ways of helping you analytically uncover some key information for your organizational and leadership development plan. All right, so when you are creating your plan, and we're focusing on your top performers for your A players, we want to give you some ideas on what their development plan could look like. So, too often when we think about developing people, we think of just like formal training for their development. But we at MPIC, there's three kind of major buckets of ways you can develop people. As you can see under bullet 2 here, assess your development options. The first one we call experiential development, and this is really just finding opportunities for your top performers to serve in higher level responsibility roles, and it doesn't need to be a promotion. For example, can they participate in a business improvement project with other people who are senior to them, so they get an opportunity to work with colleagues who are senior to them? Can they actually lead a project that's going to help the business do better? Can they attend meetings that where there are more senior people present, so they get a seat at the table and they can hear conversations, they can understand what's happening in the business, what's important in the business. So these are very cost neutral ways of developing. It's just giving your people opportunities to experience development in your organization through participation in higher level work that you as a leader are guiding them into. We say that this could be as high as 70% of the development of your people is what we call experiential development. And then there's just coaching and mentoring. Assigning a coach in your organization or a mentor in your organization to your top talent who in a one-on-one capacity is helping them learn and grow and develop just through one-on-one conversations and coaching. Again, a very cost-neutral way of developing people, but very important and very effective. And we at MPI, we see this as about 20% of your development effort. And then lastly, there's the classical training, which is about 10% of it. And that's leadership and development programs that can be done either in a classroom, that could be done online, could be self-study, it could be listening to podcasts, it could be going to conferences, listening to speakers. All those things can be training opportunities. So consider all three of those when you're creating your leadership and organizational development plans, because they're all very important, with a focus on the fact that you can do this, very often do a lot of this without having out-of-pocket funding needed to do it. And then make sure you're including your succession plans for key leadership roles, and make sure your A players are on those succession plans one or more times. You could have A players on 2 or 3 different succession plans because they have that much potential. And then, we talked about conducting a programs inventory. So if you're going to be presenting a program of improving your organization, you want to make sure you're acknowledging what you're already doing. And this is just a straightforward look at, what programs are we conducting? How are we training and developing people today? Who is doing that training? Are we self-performing it with our own resources, or are we contracting that out to an organization like MPI? And then what resources are needed to fulfill that program? Is it a trainer within our organization? Is it someone who happens to be good at leading training, who does it as a part-time job? But you need to make sure you understand what programs we're doing, who's providing it, and which resources are we relying on to do that. And then in the comments portion, you're talking about, which of those programs is working really well, and what kind of results is it delivering for the organization? What kind of feedback are we getting? How well received is it? And then which ones candidly might not be working that well and are due to be, maybe discontinued because they're really not reaping the benefits we expected. But it's always healthy to look, with a critical eye at what you're currently doing, and does it make sense to, which parts of that does it make sense to include in your program of the future, and which ones might we discontinue or do less of because they're not working so well. And in this gives you a better view of our internal resources being strained, our internal training resources. Do they have too much to do? Do they have not enough to do? This doing a worksheet like this, or having an analytical approach like this, helps you, craft your story for how you're going forward in the future with real data. So sharing your plan. So once you've compiled your plan, what you want to do is bring a story, a business case to your executive team that is compelling, that inspires them to want to say, yes, let's do that. We must do that. And, we've got some ideas to share with you on how to do that. And, we suggest that you actually take an analytical approach, that you consider strategic aspirations of your company, and then show that you've created a plan that have looked at those things and used that information in the development of your plan. Your plan will be more compelling when you've shown that you've done your homework. You've shown that you want it to be aligned with the longer term aspirations of your organization. And then, you share that, the first step in our journey we propose is to identify and develop our highest potential employees. Because, you can share data about, the criticality of working with nurturing and keeping your highest potential employees, because they are the most expensive employees to replace. And not only are they expensive to replace, but in today's talent shortage world, it may take months to replace a high potential employee. And if you truly look at the cost for that, if you actually sat down and analytically captured the true cost of replacing a high potential employee, if you're looking for a business case, for example, there's data out there that shows that, the cost of replacing an employee today is anywhere from 50% of their salary to 4 times their salary, depending on the level that they're serving. So just doing simple math, let's say you have a $50,000 a year employee, just so for easy math, and the cost to replace them is $25,000. So what could you, that could be your business case for seeking funding to do some leadership and other development in your organization, because you could invest $25,000, and if you keep one top talent person because you've done that, the investment's paid for itself. Often it is important to be able to share with your leadership, why should we spend effort and time and money on this? And well, in today's highly talent short world, the biggest reason to do it is to make sure you keep your best people. But a more inspirational reason to do it is to show your people you care and you want them to grow and develop. And then, many of you have probably read that there's a lot of articles, blogs, podcasts out there talking about how today's generation is looking, they want to be developed, they want to grow. And if we just ignore that, we know what we can expect. That population of people may not be interested in working for us. We may not be attracting the talent we want if we're not known for growing and developing people. So another aspect of sharing your plan we want to suggest you consider is what we call a two-dimensional approach. And the first dimension is we suggest that you create an environment where the leaders in your organization have a common language of leadership. So, the leaders in your organization all have a fundamental common understanding of what it means to lead. And what is that, the language look like? What are the expectations? What are the attributes of leaders in your organization, regardless of the level of leader? So there's a common fundamental level of learning and development you want all leaders to have in your organization. That's the first dimension. And the second dimension is, what are those individual plans? How are we going to serve each individual person well so they feel cared for, nurtured, and developed? And those individual things are largely going to be uncovered through your ABC analysis. You're meeting one-on-one with them, you're asking them how they want to be developed, and you're meeting both the needs of the organization and their needs. And so in your succession planning tool may also uncover some individual development needs that helps you understand, how should Rachel be developed to grow into the role she wants to grow into. So Rachel, the first dimension is Rachel having a common understanding of what it means to be a leader at the organization that she and all her peers share. But then there's an individual plan for Rachel that helps her grow into the role that she's being targeted to grow into. So those are the two dimensions we're talking about. And when you're figuring out, so then how do we carry out that development? Remember the three pathways we talked about: experiential learning and development, coaching and mentoring, and then formal training, and so on.
Bruce, so you work in your role at MPI, you work with a lot of HR leaders and executives. When our audience is thinking about taking everything from today and sort of, putting it in a nice, pretty package to present to their executive team or their CEO for approval, based on your experiences with other HR executives, are there any common themes or objections that you've heard just our clients having to overcome, and any pointers on how to overcome those?
Yeah, I would say that there's the cost is always an objection. How the investment in money that might need to be put into this is one of the biggest objections. And I just shared an example with you on how to compellingly share with your executive team. Part of it might be cost avoidance. Avoiding the cost of losing great people is one theme. But another is, where do we even start? I mean, it's when we don't have a comprehensive program already, many leaders say, how do we even know where to start? Mm-hmm. And we've given you an idea today of, start, it's you're never going to lose, in our opinion, by focusing first on your high potential talent. Because the cost of losing them is so high, and their importance to the organization has probably never been higher than it is today because of the talent shortage. So the two biggest ones usually are money. How can we make sure we're going to get a return on our investment if we invest in this? And the second is, where do we even start? There's so many options out there because all of your organizations are probably being bombarded through social media and other means. Do this, do that, whatever. Develop this, have this training. Do this training. Use an analytical approach and prioritize and don't do too much at any given time. That's another obstacle is we get very aggressive, and we create a plan that's trying to do too much at once, and we overwhelm our capacity to do it. Mm-hmm. So just being focused and using a phased approach and prioritizing and having a compelling rationale behind your prioritization.
Great. Well, we're rolling right along, and as promised, we have more than enough time now to get into some audience questions. So the first question I saw come across was around the training inventory practice, Bruce, and specifically around the column that said provider. So can you talk about when we're looking and doing the inventory of our existing training programs, how, or, if we're thinking about taking on new programs, how we should be thinking about that split between working internally, having something conducted, by internal team members versus working with anyone externally, and maybe what that ratio should look like?
Well, I'm going to give a cop-out answer and say that depends, but it really does. I would say that what we've seen through many years of experience is that, depending on the size of the organization, some very large organizations can have the capacity to invest in what I would call training departments, and they have people who are focused on, developing their employees. But in smaller to mid-sized organizations, it's often that you don't have the capacity to self-perform what I would call the human skills training in organizations, but you may have good capacity for the technical training in your organizations. So we often think, one way to look at it, what to do internally and what to maybe perhaps contract out is consider contracting out what some people call it the soft skills. We like to call them the human skills. Those are leadership development, the communication skills, time management, developing others. Those kinds of skills are often done better by organizations that think about that all the time, and it's not a part-time job. And I'm speaking somewhat in generalities, but I think that your mix of what you should self-perform versus what you should contract out is really dictated by what capacity you have to have internal resources doing it. And usually in smaller organizations, there isn't the funding available to fund several full-time people focused just on learning and development. So if you're going to contract any part of it out, we historically, the better stuff to contract out is usually the human skills training, the soft skills, leadership and development, because that's a skill that is often needs to be nurtured, and working with people who are focusing on that all the time, you're probably going to get better results than striving to do that yourselves.
Great. Another question we had was about the second tool we shared, Bruce, which was the succession planning tool. So you shared how to include those results in, the overall plan for 2023. But can you talk a little bit more about how we should be thinking about the results from that tool and maybe communicating those? Should we be sharing that with those team members? How do we include the people who are actually, the candidates, so to speak?
Yeah. That's a great question. So, if I'm creating a succession plan for Rachel, and I identify Bob, Kathy, and Tina as potential candidates to replace Rachel, I've done that through my own assessment of their readiness, of their talent, of their skill level. But I certainly want to go talk to Bob, Kathy, and Tina whether are they interested in that. Because you want to make sure you're getting a win out of a win-win out of your succession planning and making sure you're not targeting a person to fill a new role when they have no desire to do that. So you absolutely should share that you're thinking about putting a candidate on a succession plan to measure their will or their desire to do so. Whenever you can align the desire with the skill set and the organizational desire for them to fill it, you're going to get a better result than if you're kind of imposing someone into a role that they don't really want. So absolutely engage the candidates, and they should also be co-designing their development plan. We, as leaders, we can often, make a first cut at what Tina should do to learn to become the next Rachel. But I want to go to Tina and say, here's what Rachel does. Here's what you do today. What do you think you need to develop to become the next Rachel? And have it be a collaborative effort, because then they're going to buy in better and be more inspired to do it if they've had a voice in their development.
Great. I think we have time for one more question, Bruce. And our last one is around creating excitement. So you shared a lot about overcoming objections, but do you have any tips or pointers for helping to create excitement around developing our people in 2023, both for the people that we're, asking for buy-in from on our executive team, but then also the people who are being developed?
Yeah, this is another great question. From the perspective of, from the senior leaders, sometimes it's hard for them to get excited because they see this as an expense or as it could even be a distraction, because, we're paying people to come to work every day, whether it's at home or in the office or on the shop floor or whatever, to produce a product or to carry out a service. And, that's what their customers pay them for. So sometimes it's hard to get excited about investing in people so they can do that better in the future without a compelling reason why that can actually deliver better results in the future. So it's very important to try to get your executive team excited about the bigger, better possibilities the organization has through an investment in developing people. And I would suggest find one or more people on your executive or your senior teams who have the inclination to get excited about, the possibilities, the potential of having a better, an organization filled with people who are feeling cared for, nurtured, and have the opportunity to develop, and then use those people as your profits with the rest of the executive team to generate more interest across their colleagues. And so that's kind of at the leadership level. And then at the level, the fundamental staff level in your organizations, helping people see, the future they could have in the organization by developing themselves. Your best employees should be very invested in their own development and should be wanting to contribute to how they get developed. And, having helped them create, what does their future look like in the organization, get them excited about where they could go and what that journey could look like. And if they're co-designers in that, it's going to help them get more excited. And again, ask your more enthusiastic A players in your organization to be a model for others to see, right? And their enthusiasm could be contagious. So, work the enthusiasm and excitement both at the leadership level and at your staff level, and let the two meet and just build on each other.
Awesome. Thanks, Bruce. So to close out, everyone, we thank you so much for sharing your time with us this morning. We know there's a lot of other places you could have been and a lot of other things you could be doing. So thank you for sharing your time with us. Keep an eye out for our upcoming webinars in 2023. We do this on a quarterly basis with sessions that look pretty similar to this. And we do have some leadership programs kicking off in January. We have sort of 3 tiers of those at MPI. one targeted at individual contributors, one targeted for team leaders, and one for executive team members. So if you are interested in any of those, please don't hesitate to reach out or explore more on our website. Otherwise, we hope you have an amazing holiday season and happy New Year. Bruce, any other closing comments?
Yeah, I would just like to reinforce what Rachel just said here on these leadership programs. If you recall earlier in the webinar, I mentioned establishing a common language of leadership. These 3 programs we offer here could be great vehicles for you to do so in your organizations. These programs can become the foundation for your common language of leadership in your organization. So these programs could get at that first dimension we talked about previously.
All right. Thank you. Well, have a great day, everyone. We're closing a couple minutes early, but hopefully if you have time to get to your next meeting or just take a breath in between. So have a great day and happy holidays.